In what's been called a clear example of censorship, British media regulator Ofcom has revoked Press TV's UK licence and has removed the news network from the Sky platform. I'm Kavita Vai, and in this news analysis we will look at what repercussions this move will have on the freedom of speech in the UK, a regulator which has stated they are an individual body not funded by the UK government, even though facts state otherwise. We'll also look at how Press TV will respond to this decision. Nothing more and nothing less than its stated objective from day one: to report with precision and honesty world events, even if it means being critical of the UK government, and to continue being the voice of the voiceless.
The British government's media regulatory body, Ofcom, finally forces Press TV off air in Britain. Ofcom earlier fined Press TV Limited in London £100,000 for the channel's airing of a 10-second news clip. At the same time, Ofcom has made moves to revoke the licence of Press TV Limited in the UK for what it calls Press TV Limited's lack of control over the channel's broadcast. Now, the question is, if Press TV Limited does not have control over the broadcast, why is it getting fined? And, if it does have control, why is the licence being revoked? Ofcom contradictions are nothing new for Press TV. The British government's media tool has on several occasions changed its decisions regarding Press TV in its two-year campaign against the alternative news channel. Ofcom claims it is not a government organisation in response to Press TV's complaints about the body's subservience to the British government and the monarchy that have been a focus of Press TV's critical coverage in recent years. But there is every indication that it is. It gets both its authority and funding from the British government. Ofcom was created by an Act of Parliament and gets most of its funding from governmental grant and aid. Britain's Office for National Statistics has also said Ofcom must be reclassified as a central government unit. As a news channel broadcast in the UK, Press TV has shed more light on the British government's domestic and foreign policies. It has aired critical views regarding Britain's involvement in wars of aggression in Iraq and Afghanistan. It has also shown the close ties between the British royal family and the UK-founded monarchies in the Persian Gulf region, including the autocratic regimes in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, which have been oppressing their people for decades. Press TV has also provided critical coverage of the extravagant costs of Britain's royal wedding at a time of great financial difficulty for ordinary Britons. The channel covered the 2011 unrest in Britain and the heavy-handed police crackdown drawing the ire of London's ruling establishment. The move by Ofcom to remove Press TV from the Sky platform aims to end Press TV's broadcasting in the UK. But the media arm of the British royal family fails to grasp the reality of mass communication in the modern era and the impossibility of containing the free flow of information.
Let's introduce our guests to get this news analysis going. We have author and journalist Phil Rees, who joins us from London. We have freelance journalist Lizzie Phelan, who joins us from Damascus, and political analyst Saab Shah, who joins us from Belfast. I'd like to welcome our guests, but before I continue with this news analysis, it needs to be noted that in the past recent shows we have had this Ofcom ruling on Press TV. We had invited Ofcom's officials. However, they have refused to appear on our live news analysis to defend their decisions. We also invited them for this show, but again, they decided not to come. And of course, this casts doubts on the issue of accountability on the side of Ofcom. Phil Rees, first question to you. What do you think? A clear example of media censorship to have taken place today?
I think the result, without any doubt, is media censorship. I mean, I can't look in the minds of Ofcom, but what we do know, one clear fact we do know, is something that's come from WikiLeaks. And they found that the highest levels of British government are exploring ways to limit the output of press TV. So clearly this matter was being discussed at senior levels of the British government, how to curtail press TV, and the fact is that its exposure in Britain has been curtailed. So, you know, whether Ofcom was the tool used by the British government to do that, I mean, I can't say. But as we know, within the British establishment, you know, there's a kind of revolving door of prominent people, and this kind of influence is not exercised overtly. It's somewhat more subtly, but nevertheless, I mean, whatever Ofcom says, unfortunately, the result of this is deeply political, because certain viewpoints, and many of those you explained in your video, but certain viewpoints which have a significant following in Britain will no longer be available on a large platform.
Saab Shah, why is Ofcom insistent on this one issue, that it is not funded by the UK government, when it clearly is?
They can say whatever they want at the same time. Most of the managers and directors and the people who operate in Ofcom, they get this job as reward to them when they retire from their TV network or whatever. And here we can see the Zionist lobby influence in Ofcom. And as your previous guest mentioned about WikiLeaks, we know the campaign to take press TV off the air has been going on for years, and Israel wanted that. And the United States of America pushed toward that. And of course, they can say whatever they want about Ofcom decisions. But to me, I see this is a real dark day for freedom of speech, and a gruesome reminder of the Spanish Inquisition to silence the voice of press TV, which give a huge number of followers in the UK and EU an alternative point of view, which analyze what's really going on in the world. And that's what scared them. So I see the timing even of today, which is finally taking it off the Sky network with the SOPA and PIPA acts in the United States of America to actually to silence a huge part of the internet and to control cyberspace. So it's an international and imperialist war against freedom of expression, and all that is coming to deny Iran the ability of expressing really what's happening in Iran and the motives behind imperialist forces preparing to attack a country who never for the last 300 years attacked anyone except defending itself against aggressors. And that's what we see. We see the West is preparing to deny the soft power of Iran, explaining to the world what's really going on.
Right.
And especially they wake up to that since the criminal war in Gaza. They've seen the effect of a press TV bringing what's really happening and the massacres in Gaza. And that's created a huge support for the Palestinian in West Europe. And we can see the results of it effectively today.
Lizzie Phelan, let's go with this idea of freedom of expression. And let's look at what happened regarding the UK protests. Press TV obviously highlighted that. Now, why don't you give us your impressions of David Cameron's statements when after the protest he said, you know what, we have to have more control over Twitter and some of these personal messaging services. Isn't that a reflection as to their decision now being addressed through the revoking of Press TV's license of the current administration in power?
Yes, well, I mean, how ironic that here I'm sitting in Damascus in Syria, which is a country that is being accused by the British state of lacking all the freedoms that we claim to hold so dear in Britain, i.e. the one that you just mentioned, freedom of expression. And of course, Syria has been condemned for not allowing journalists into the country. And today we have an arm of the British state for the first time closing down an international channel in its own borders. And let's not forget that when in Venezuela, Hugo Chavez close down RCTV for a much less flimsier reason than they are giving for closing down Press TV. That, of course, he closed down RCTV because they were calling for his assassination, no less. Then the British state and British press had a field day accusing him of lacking democracy in his country and cracking down on freedoms that we supposedly hold so dear, and actually freedoms that we go around the world bombing other countries in the name of, not to mention, of course, Libya, which was being accused of a lack of democracy, freedom of speech, human rights, etc. So really, it is a very dark day for freedoms in Britain, and it does look like we are moving more and more towards a fascistic state in Britain. And the chief executive of Press TV was right to say that this was an act of aggression by the British elite. And of course, your previous guests are absolutely right in saying that this is just another part of the ratcheting up of the hostilities towards Iran. But really what it shows, in my opinion, is that just how dangerous it is for the British elite to have any voice which is just in the slightest bit different from the barrage of the same media propaganda that we have on a daily basis. And really there is very little difference in what is said, despite the array of different newspapers and television stations that we have in Britain. For example, from The Guardian to The Telegraph, to Sky News, to the BBC. While there may be some differences between these organizations, there's one thing that they all hold in common, and that is that they all are dedicated to criminalizing independent and sovereign states of the global south, like Iran, like the government of Ahmadinejad, like Syria, like Venezuela, like China, like Russia. And so to have a station like Press TV, which provides a different perspective, which isn't about broadcasting war propaganda to justify aggression against independent countries, really is dangerous for imperialist countries like Britain.
Well, Phil Rees, Lizzie Phelan talked about these other news organizations. Well, let's talk about Rupert Murdoch's news organizations. I mean, here he has these media outlets, of which, well, we know the case involving the phone hacking scandal and the interception of emails, of which he was fined, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of pounds. But yet he's allowed to stay on. But then we have this case against Press TV. Does that make sense?
Well, of course, newspapers in Britain have no sort of mechanism to patrol them in the way that Ofcom exists for TV. But I think this points to a key problem here, and that is that Ofcom has this assumption of balance, of impartiality. And yet that really is a very faulty notion, and it's been a very faulty one in Britain, because ever since Tony Blair basically took the Labour Party to be another right-wing party, a kind of neocon party, the British media, even, forgetting Murdoch now, even the BBC and all those who claim to be balanced, they didn't have anything to balance. They only had one view, and that is the party that was for neoliberal capitalism and the party that was for war, because that's what the other party wanted as well, and that's what now the coalition party wants. So what you've got in the British media, which generally reflects what's being said in Parliament, is you've got no debate. You've got a consensus. So, indeed, Rupert Murdoch is allowed to say what he wants to in terms of warmongering in the press. And then when it comes to the broadcast media, the laws here restrict debate because they see the parameters of debate as being defined by the political parties. So that means that there's a huge number of people in this country who effectively are disenfranchised now, whose voice isn't being heard. And certainly Press TV satisfied that voice. We know the subjects that we're talking about. We're talking about foreign policy. We're talking about the role of the royalty in Britain. We're talking about what's going on in Northern Ireland. There's a whole series of items which simply are not discussed in the mainstream media in Britain.
Right. And then when the question of balance comes into play, Saab Shah, I mean, okay, is there a balance when we have 1,300 Palestinians, mostly women and children, dying in the Gaza Strip, people around the world watching this happen? I mean, where's the balance that Ofcom, for example, as a regulatory body, wants Press TV to follow? when they say that Press TV Limited, which operates out of London, its editorial content is controlled in Iran. First of all, how do they know that? I mean, we'll put that into perspective for us. What is it that they deem as being balanced when they want editorial content to be controlled, in essence, by them? Maybe they should give a handbook then and say these are the kind of topics we should or should not cover.
It's the problem, I see it, they discovered Press TV is really influential and changing point of views in the West. And they didn't create Press TV. They couldn't influence Press TV. They created a TV station called Al Jazeera in English to contribute to the Western media the point of view from the Middle East. And they thought through that kind of a channel they can, of course, dictate what they want and what they see, and they get the propaganda through it and through BBC as well and CNN. They discovered they can't. If you look at the social network, the media like Facebook, look at the links shared between people. You don't see much of Al Jazeera or BBC or CNN. You see a lot of video clips and links from Press TV and RT, Russia's Today. These are the two main stations which are popular among people, ordinary people and activists, and that scares them. So that kind of line bring truth to the people about what's going on in Gaza. They created the Al Jazeera, which is told. People thought in the Middle East and in the West it's really radical, and suddenly it showed its real face, which was a tool to be used to dominate the Middle East. And they want that kind of line which will help them to loot the resources of the Middle East. They want to loot the Iranian oil now. So how are they going to do it when there is a channel like Press TV can bring the truth about what's happening in Iran and about the aims of this kind of war in Gaza, exposing the genocide in that level, which Press TV helped in bringing what's really going on home to the UK and Ireland and the West, is really hurting the Zionist entity, and is paying a heavy price for that, since a lot of the people in the West now are pro-Palestinians. And I mentioned before, there is polls being conducted in the UK by a poll called Gov UK, and they found over nearly 80% of the people are for the government, the British government, to recognize the Palestinian state. So this is an indication, and they want to stop that. They want to stop the loss, which is and that is all coming from the American Patriotic Act, which moved to Europe and start censoring TV organization, even a humanitarian organization, and individuals. And
right. Lizzie Phelan, you know, we have this movement that's going on in the United States, the Occupy movement. We have what is going on in London, which the eviction notice was just passed. Maybe this has something to do with those sponsorships that exist behind these media organizations, of which you have certain companies that are endorsing these TV stations, of which they have been accused of representing the 1%. And of course, the 1% have relations with government officials. There are no sponsorship on Press TV except for maybe Iran's oil company. Okay, that's about it. There's no other companies. So therefore, if we highlight things such as the Occupy movements, such as the war in Gaza when it happened, such as what goes on in the occupied territories, that just rubs them the wrong way and goes against the 1% who own and are part of that sponsorship. What do you think?
Yes, well, exactly. Your previous guest was absolutely right to highlight Al Jazeera. And, you know, I often say that Al Jazeera has pulled off the greatest propaganda trick that actually I've ever seen. Over the past 10 years or so, during the war on terror, they built up a lot of credibility in the Arab streets and in the West amongst the so-called anti-war circles in their coverage of events in Palestine, Iraq and Afghanistan. But of course, in the last year or so, since basically the so-called Arab Spring, we have seen that actually they have been completely in bed with Western foreign policy and have championed wars in Libya and now Syria, and really their coverage is very anti-China and Russia, etc. So really the only remaining independent voices from Western foreign policy, as your previous guest rightly said, is channels like, in the English language that is channels like Russia Today and Press TV. And you know, you mentioned before about Ofcom and its impartiality, and if Ofcom really did care about freedom of speech and you know, impartiality in these things, then let's not forget that during Operation Cast Lead in 2008 and 2009, when the BBC refused to broadcast the DEC appeal to raise money for the victims of that attack, Ofcom did nothing, despite a lot of pressure, actually. And where has Ofcom been when Al Jazeera has been proven many times over the last few months, over and over again, to have been broadcasting fabricated footage from Syria and from Libya. And of course, you know, we're seeing very much an increasing of the pressure, and I'm in Syria now, so I will talk about it, of the pressure in the media on countries like Syria. And Press TV has been one of the noble exceptions that has provided objective coverage. So yes, you're right, it is very, and you know, the 1% is of course the ruling global elite, the Western elite. And through its media, through channels that we've mentioned, through sponsoring these channels, the ruling elite likes to enforce what I call Western cultural imperialism, and it is up to states that are victims of Western imperialism to build their own effective media, and Press TV is one example of that. So really, what this move shows is that channels like Press TV really are a threat to the 1%. And in order to continue to challenge the 1%, we need channels like Press TV, actually, and we need more initiatives like this. So really, countries like Iran and other independent countries should take Press TV as an inspiring example, and they shouldn't they shouldn't
I'm sorry,
be
Lizzie
demoralized
Phelan.
or
Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you very much. From Damascus, Lizzie Phelan, she's a freelance journalist. We had author and journalist Phil Rees from London with his statements, and political analyst South from Belfast. Thank you so much, and thank you, the viewer, for watching another edition of Press TV News. We might be off the Sky platform, but we're not off the airwaves in terms of satellite channels and, of course, the internet. Do log on to presstv.ir to find out the ways that you can watch and read on us. From me, Kaveh Takwe, and the entire team here in the capital, Tehran, it's goodbye.